Rajiva Wijesinha. He's the former Minister of Higher Education. Thanks for joining us on this news hour. Just firstly, your reaction to what we've seen happen in Sri Lanka's capital today.
Well, as Iswaran said, this is the result of both enormous anger and enormous despair, because we have had this crisis building up, well, in different interpretations for 10 years and for 6 months. But over the last 6 months, we've seen absolutely no measures to remedy the situation, except continuous ad hoc begging for money from various sources. And when there was a similar outbreak in May, and the violence precipitated by government, in fact, led to the Prime Minister of the time, Gotabaya Rajapaksa's brother Mahinda, having to go, Gotabaya sort of produced Ranil Wickremesinghe out of a hat. The Ranil had been conclusively defeated at the previous election, in which his party failed to win a single seat. He had for years kept control and denied the succession to the person who is now leader of the opposition, who then had to set up his own party. Ranil ran for election with his old United National Party, which had in effect governed the country for the previous period. And his appalling mismanagement led to Gotabaya's resounding victory in 2019 and the victory of Gotabaya's party in the parliamentary election. But Ranil, who didn't win a single seat, was then made Prime Minister by Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Almost, it seemed, as an act of revenge upon the country, because, there were claims that Ranil was the darling of the West, who wanted to who would get aid from foreign countries. But of course, he didn't get anything. And the result is increasing chaos and despair. And when finally protests forced Gotabaya to leave, fleeing a couple of days ago, and it seems some other members of his family have also fled, who have been plundering the place, they left as their final absurd legacy Ranil Wickremesinghe, who was loathed by the country clearly at the previous election in 2020, then got into parliament as the nationalist representative of his party, having said he wouldn't take the seat.
Yeah,
and
he's
been thirsting to be president for 20 years.
To interrupt you there, but it does seem like Ranil Wickremesinghe is not going to give up power anytime soon. So seeing the anger in the country, seeing protesters take to the streets, storming the Prime Minister's palace, the presidential palace, it really speaks to the anger of the people who, for 20 years, Sri Lanka has been ruled essentially by the Rajapaksa family and their allies.
No, that's not quite correct. Mahinda Rajapaksa, I was a member of his parliamentary group. I left him in 2014 because of the mismanagement of his family and the corruption. But the government that succeeded for 5 years, Ranil Wickremesinghe, together with a titular president called Rajiva Wijesinha, ran the country and made the situation even worse. And Ranil essentially played ball with the Rajapaksas and did nothing to remedy the situation. The whole idea of restorative justice, which I had crossed over on. I was a minister in that government. I resigned very soon because clear to me it was a mixture as before. So I don't think it's correct to blame the Rajapaksas. They certainly have played hell in the last 10 years. But Ranil, in 5 years in between, also did appalling things, like a central bank on stamp. And the fact that Gotabaya made Ranil Prime Minister is ample evidence that this is a diarchy of evil, of corruption and evil. And for Ranil to stay on now, having promised to resign from the post of Prime Minister, is yet another example of the lies with which he has been treating the country for ages.
So where do you see this all?
The people are furious, understandably.
Understandably, exactly, Rajiva. But where do you see all of this now headed? I mean, the country has no foreign currency. People are struggling. It surely cannot get worse for Sri Lanka. Something needs to happen.
Well, this is what we all thought when Gotabaya went. But if Ranil is determined to hang on and to precipitate more anger, and even to kill people, I mean, someone died today when he unleashed tear gas on protesters. If that is what's going to happen, the violence will simply get worse. And, it will be very simple for Ranil to go and allow the Speaker to act as president, because the Speaker is known as a man without much ambition. He's certainly not capable of being president in the long term. But at least he could tide things over as a conservative figure. But Ranil's ruthless ambition will keep him there until people die. And I'm really sorry to say this, but it is wickedness beyond belief. And Gotabaya Rajapaksa bears a share in that, because he should have dismissed Ranil as Prime Minister before he went, so that people who are tainted by corruption and violence are not part of any new dispensation.
Rajiva Wijesinha.
The people want Ranil to go, the country wants Ranil to go, and unless he goes, I'm afraid disaster will ensue.
Disaster indeed. Really appreciate your thoughts on this issue. Rajiva Wijesinha, live to us there from Colombo.